start our session this morning and really hope that all of you are good. You had a good weekend, and that the week so far has been a good week. But what I'm going to ask for us to maybe do is if you are able to, in the chat, if you maybe just want to do a quick check-in, if you had to now rate yourself from a 1 to a 10, how are you feeling this morning? I mean, that would be very helpful. And what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the session. And I'm hoping that as we start the session, that today you would see another picture of when it comes to building your business. Thank you so much for those who already started. For those who just joined, we're just saying that you are able to just kind of put in a number in the chat of how you are feeling out of 10. Right? Just rate yourself out of 10, how you're feeling this morning, and we will then kind of get going. So while that is happening, I'm going to try and get the presentation going. And today's session is actually quite an easy session. Just let me know if you can see my screen. There we go. Let's see. So part of what we're going to be doing this morning is we're going to be looking at this idea of, as you know, over the last week, we started our journey by speaking about knowing and understanding your customer. Remember, we spent a whole day just speaking about understanding your customer, knowing they getting to a point where you know who they are, what they do, where they do things, and then also getting to a point where you know the why. And we intentionally did that because we believe that if you know who your customers are, you're then able to build your best value proposition. Right. So that was the next part of the journey where we spoke about how do you now know your value proposition itself. And then we progressed, and from there we started talking about the value proposition canvas, if you can also recall. And then finally we got to a point where we spoke about the business model canvas, which is one of my favorite um, tools to use as an entrepreneur. So that was what we did last week, right? And I just kind of wanted to make sure that we are all aligned with that. So today we actually going to be looking at what we speak about growth strategy. How do you go about if you are thinking about wanting to kind of grow your business? And I think that's something that is quite useful. That I'm hoping as we start speaking through this, there would be some additional light bulbs that goes on. And of course, at any time, if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask questions as well. So for us this morning, I'm hoping if all of you are okay, if we are able to kind of push through, then we might be able to finish around 11:15. Are you all okay with us just pushing through this morning? If you, I assume the silence. Okay, there's some thumbs that you're happy for us to just push through. Perfect. So we're going to try and aim to kind of push through so that we can conclude the formal side of the session around 11:15. Okay, perfect. So for us this morning, it's about growing your business, and every business, every entrepreneur, when you start the journey of building a business, you always need to get yourself to a point where you want to see it grow, right? You want to grow it to where you believe the potential of this business is. So just to kind of do a quick little uh, overview of what we're going to be doing this morning. Like I've mentioned, we've already done our check-in. We're just going to recap quickly on the business model canvas, and then we're going to go into talking about different growth strategies, right? We're going to talk about growth. And I hope that you as we kind of go through the session, it will be very helpful for you as well, to think about how do you apply growth strategies in your business? How do you apply growth strategy in other facets of what you are busy with? Because I'm pretty sure you can apply it in many other facets as well. Um, Now, firstly, to just kind of give us a quick little recap of what we did last Thursday. Last week Thursday, we engaged and we were talking about the business model canvas. Remember, every business model, I don't know if how many of you would recall, but every business model needs to do three things. It needs to show you how you do three things, and that is, how do you create value, how do you deliver value, and how do you capture value. So every business is going to tell you how do you going to create the value, how are you going to deliver that value, and how you're going to capture the value. Capture the value means what's your revenue model going to be, how you're going to generate revenue, right? We also spoke last week where we said that there's a distinct difference between a revenue model and a business model. Revenue model is how you make money. Your business model is really the whole operations and how everything is together, right? That's your business model itself. So I really want us to be very, very conscious of that. And then at the end of last week, Thursday, we introduced you to the business model canvas, which has these 9 segments, right? And I told you this is most probably one of my favorite tools when we think about entrepreneurs, right? This is one of my absolute favorite tools because it helps you to map out your entire business on a little bit of a canvas. And at the center of the business model canvas, as we said the last time, you find your value proposition. This is the value of promise to your customer. That value proposition and is basically directed to a specific customer segment. If you have multiple customer segments, you might have different kinds of value propositions for that particular segment. And a good example would be, let's say, for example, you're running a bank. A bank might have private clients, they might have retail clients, they might have business clients. Depending on the type of customer segment that you are, the bank will have different services and the value proposition will be different. So therefore, it's important for you, you have to segment your customers. And last week we mentioned that your customers doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be the patient. In this instance, it could also be you might be servicing a small business and you render health services to their staff and their families, right? So that's a very different. So in this instance, your customer is actually the business, and because the business is paying for the service. So it's always helpful for us to segment our customer base, and then we look at how do we now, and we mentioned that each value proposition, and I'm working on the right hand side of the value. If you look at the screen, we're working on the right hand side of the canvas. Every value proposition needs to be able to get delivered to the customer, and how you engage with the customer. And that is really, and how you reach your customer. And that is called the channels, right? And we spoke about that you can do different types of channels if you are thinking about reaching a specific customer. If you are looking at selling to corporates, corporates are probably not going to be sitting on your WhatsApp status, right? Or so you have to have a different channel in how you're going to reach corporate clients. Your customer relationships is also how you engage your value proposition with your customer segment. And again, that depends on the customer segment that you have. So we spoke about this last week, and then we mentioned everything on the left-hand side is how you create value. Remember, the right-hand side is how you deliver value, all right? In order for you to create value, we understand that at time you're going to need certain key partners. And in our case, as we are building this kind of micro virtual practice of sorts, you have an opportunity to partner with be it with Innovate. We have Art Labs and a whole range of other partners, but also for whatever it is that you're going to do to create your value, you might need to do certain key activities. And of course, next week we're going to look at some activities that we're going to be doing, although it's going to be on your own time. And then there's going to be certain key resources that you're going to require in order for you to create the value. So every business will always need key partners. You would need to have certain resources and certain things that you need to do in order for you to create, deliver, and capture value. And of course, your revenue stream tells you how you capture value. Your cost structure is dependent on your key activities and your key resources, right? So that's how you know what your cost structures are. And when you look at your canvas, you always want to ensure that your revenue stream is greater than your cost structure, right? That's just you want to make sure that it's a profitable business. So this was something that we spoke about last week. So before I continue and proceed, I wonder if there's anybody that might have any questions or you want me to clarify something. I just want to use this opportunity to do that before we proceed talking about growth strategies. Okay, if there's anybody who have any questions or any comments, you're welcome to do that. But I just wanted to refresh of you to see the business model canvas as a tool that maps out your business. And don't confuse, the business model canvas is not a business plan, okay? It maps out your business for you. For those of you that if ever you need to do a presentation about your business, the business model canvas, every aspect of it most likely could be a slide on a slide deck if you are looking at pitching your business to someone. But are there any questions just related to the business model canvas or what we did last week before we proceed into this week's discussions? No? No questions? No comments?
I was wondering, did you guys spend some time thinking about your canvases and your and you know what we're gonna be kind of going into? If you did, you can pop it in the group. If there's any thoughts on that or comments on that, if you did make some time to go through the process of doing it. Tomorrow, yeah, we're gonna map out the actual model that we're doing, and I'm following, the same canvas approach like Marlon. So we'll map that out for you guys tomorrow anyway. But yeah, it would be very cool if there's any comments or feedback or thoughts, as you guys went through it. You can obviously speak or pop it in the chat as we go.
Perfect. No, thank you. Thank you for that. And remember when you start with the canvases, you want to first start with identifying who you believe are your ideal customer. And your ideal customer has to be a customer that you believe will come back repeatedly for you. That's an ideal customer. And also, as you begin to build the profile of that customer, I think that's important because then you're going to know which channel to use to reach the customer. So that's a very, very important distinction. Now, one of my oh, brilliant, Mikhail. Mikhail says worked on a patient avatar. I want us to be very, very clear that let's use the approach of customer as a customer profile or customer avatar. The only reason for that is because if you are segmenting, it might be that you see that your service that you have to offer could be rendered to a business which might have a different type of avatar. So that's very, very helpful. But it's very important that you just kind of go back to just, the basic things. You do it, you can do it roughly on a piece of paper, take a photo of it and kind of share it if you want to, and happy to share some inputs. The canvases are available for you to draw on or to do it. But if you just want to take a little pen, pencil, whatever, and just want to quickly do a drawing, you're welcome to do that. It's not, we definitely don't need it to create masterpieces. It can look like a Picasso, and it will be fine as long as you understand what you've put down. I think that's important. So, very, very good question here. Once you've established your canvas, when is the right time to launch? Now, firstly, the business model canvas is what you use to map out your business, right? Launch is is all about when, remember, you're going to have to validate a lot of the things on your business model canvas. You have to validate, do I actually have the right customer? And 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 what you're going to do is you have your value proposition. You're going to try and reach them through your channel. And if you see that it's not working, then you just go and you change the channel, or you change your customer segment. Remember last week we spoke about pivots. Then you're just going to have to do a little pivot. So the quality of the model is, as many of the segments needs to have a V on it. V meaning it's validated, right? So all you're going to have to do is you just have to kind of validate. So let's say, for example, one of the things that you are going to render will be, you want to see, are there a way to provide consults to patients via My Pocket Health, which is the virtual tool. You believe, your hypothesis is there should be a way to get some patients to be able to utilize that service as a value proposition for them. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to ask yourself, so who are the type of customer that would prefer doing a virtual consult? And maybe that's just a question for anybody. You could either drop it in the chat. What type of customer do you believe would choose to do a virtual consult? Anybody, you can either drop it in the chat, or you can just raise your hand and unmute yourself. I'm just going on Muhammad's question around this thing about launching too soon, keep iterating, failing fast. Okay, Precious says it's a customer that is professional, very busy. Any other things that describes this kind of customer? Christel, right? Living far away farmers, people that are traveling, a low risk console. Okay, so if you look at the list of, just in the chat, if everybody can just look at the list in the chat. So here we have, there's professional busy people, there's university students, there's people that need low risk consults, there's people that live far away farmers, young busy professionals, and people who are traveling. Now, if you just read that list, that is not one person. That's actually a range. So you actually have to segment people that are farmers, right? Who are living far away in remote areas. That's one customer segment. So you would ask yourself, how do I reach farmers that are remote, that are living far away? What would be my channel to reach them? So now you have to think, okay, so what am I going to do? One, because I now begin to unpack who they are, do I go and see, are there any communities, farmer communities, where I can share the service to this community of farmers, right? Do they have networks? Are there any publications or things that they generally engage with where we can share this as a particular service? Perhaps, I remember there used to be I don't know if it still exists, Landbou Weekblad. Used to be a farmer, a weekly uh, uh, publication. Do you do a partnership with a publication where farmers read, where you say, listen, for your readership or for your network, your community, we might give 50 Rand off on a virtual consult. I don't know. But you have to think about, how do we take that aspect of our value proposition to reach this particular customer base, right? Or this particular customer segment, which I think is very, very important. Now, the same with university students is completely different, right? Where do you reach your university students? Where do you find people that are professionals and extremely busy, right? Or people that are traveling, tourists, if they need to get, so all of these things, I think, are things that you need to think about, and you segment them, and then you ask yourself, what is the ideal channel to reach that type of customer segment? Right. So if we look at this, and I think coming back to your question, Muhammad, is we sometimes we worry about launching too soon, but in this case, if you have the tools to go and validate something in your business model, if you can validate, do you have problem and solution fit? Do you have a solution and there's a base of customers that need that solution? Based on the list that was shared there, it seems that a virtual consult does have a place in this world, right? Um, and then I would actually advise you that you try different channels, and the minute you get the right channel that works for that value proposition, then you double down on that particular channel. That just means you now know how you can reach that particular customer, and then you do it with different things in your canvas. Then you ask yourself, okay, I'm now going to validate my revenue stream. I'm going to start off by saying, maybe it's 300 Rand a consult, as an example, or 250, or whatever. But now you see that the people, the university students, don't want to pay 250 Rand. Perhaps you now drop the price to maybe a 200 Rand consult, or whatever. So each thing in the canvas, you have to go and do the validation. So all you want to do is, once you find, so launching is not when your business model canvas is perfect. Launching is when you have something to validate. That's basically what I wanted to say. And I went right around the mountain to tell you that one thing. But I hope it's helpful, Muhammad, in responding and answering your question. I don't know if there's any response that you have there to that.
I think I just agree with you there, Mohammed. Muhammad, so the faster you go in, the sooner you're going to learn what is, because we've got preconceived thoughts of what is going to work. And once you just get into the market, you start sort of iterating, and that iteration is effectively consistent pivots ultimately, where you try it with a customer, it doesn't work, then try with another one, it doesn't work. So you'll see when we go into the detail of sort of the model, we will look at also exactly, all the tools you'll need to launch. But that's just the base launch. Everything after is for you to kind of iterate from. And that's going to be in your reality, the opportunities you identify in your market. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. So and thank you for that question as well, Mohammed. I think it's really important that, and that is also the reason why I want us to be clear. You do the business model canvas. Your goal is to go and see if you can get validation for everything, right? And the more your canvas is validated, it means your business, then it shows the health of the business and the possibility of the business. That's what we really want to get to. Are there any other questions before we move on to the growth strategy? Okay. So let's look at, what does it mean when we talk about a growth strategy. Now, every entrepreneur, I want to make a distinction. There's a difference between being a business owner and an entrepreneur. Okay. A small business owner would want to just keep their small business and they sustain themselves, and that is absolutely fine. Entrepreneurs, on the other hand, are people that would look at, how do I go and grow what I have? And I grow it to the next stage, or I grow it to get more customers. I grow it so that I can create bigger impact. Entrepreneurs will always look at, how do I increase my impact? How do I increase the opportunities around me, right? And that is something that I believe is very, very important to make a distinction, right? So the same, if as a medical doctor, and someone in the health profession, right? Your fundamental thing is, you in a very peculiar industry, because fundamentally you want to make sure that people don't need you anymore. That should fundamentally be doctors' ultimate goal, isn't it? Like, that people wouldn't get sick anymore. So that's quite a difficult thing to go. And the crazy thing is, your market is massive, right? There's always going to be people that need some level of healthcare and wellness in some form or the other. But now the question is, how do you, in your business, ask yourself, so how do I begin to think as an entrepreneur, right? Perhaps I would always have in the past have been happy just to go the same route of, I'm gonna share a WhatsApp status if you need a consult, or I'm gonna go and do something through the locum agencies, which is great. But how do I grow the possibilities and the potential that I have as an thinking as an entrepreneur, right? All of a sudden, you find yourself that you are connected to sports clubs and you've never looked at that as a possibility. You might go to your favorite coffee shop and they know you by name. Everybody's, you've never thought about, hey, could I actually offer the service to the staff at this particular coffee shop? So you begin to build as an entrepreneur, you start seeing opportunities all around you because your fundamental view is you want to increase your impact, you want to create more value, and that is part of the reason why entrepreneurs are a unique bunch of people. And I believe when you combine people that's in the health profession, medical doctors, and entrepreneurship, you must probably have one of the most magical and beautiful combinations that you could ever find, because it means you have people whose business will be on a mission to get people to be well, right? To be healthy, which automatically has got a huge impact possibilities. It has a so the fact that those of you that are listening to my voice and that's online have made a conscious decision you want to be in pursuit of. How do you grow as an entrepreneur within the health sector? I feel that's just a beautiful thing. It's just a highly impactful thing, and I'm very excited about that. And I think the reason why I'm sharing that is because when we think and talk about growth strategy, every entrepreneur needs to have some level of a growth strategy. And I'm going to share a couple of strategies with you because this is really what we want to do this morning, right? And I'm hoping that as we go through this kind of growth plan, that you would see the possibilities, you would see the opportunities that is before you. Now, firstly, how many of you have ever heard of this guy by the name of Ansoff, Igor Ansoff? I don't know if you speak about Insor Agnitsov at all, but he's a mathematician who lived back, I think it was the 60s or something. Anybody ever heard of Igor Ansoff? No? Okay. So Igor, the Ansoff, he created something called the Ansoff matrix, which is I absolutely love this. If you can understand this that I'm about to tell you, then you've got growth strategy covered. Okay. If you just understand this little diagram in front of you, and I'm going to try and simplify my version of it so that it helps us. Now, every business, and I want you to listen to this, every business, well, growth can only happen through one of these quadrants. Traditionally, you can grow your business in one of these quadrants. Most businesses find themselves where, and if you look at the diagram, where they have an existing product, they have a product or a service, and they're selling it to an existing market. I think last week when we were chatting, we were saying, oh, it seems like all of a sudden there's a lot of these little practices that are popping up everywhere. You know, it's almost like you find that the market is saturated with people setting up practices, and now they're all in offering existing services to an existing market. So and that means the only way you can grow your business in that segment, which is the market penetration segment, is you either have to be cheaper, or your value that you create is at such a level you create more value for the same price. Okay. So what I want you to listen very carefully. When your business is in the existing market and existing product stage, where you're in the market penetration quadrant, your only competitive advantage, the only value proposition that you really have, is to be cheaper, or to make sure that your customer service is of such a level that people would want to come and buy from you or use your service. Or you charge the same price, but you create more value for them. You give them more. right? That is it. The only way a business can grow if you find yourself in the market penetration quadrant. Another good example is, I mean, for those of us that lived in townships, you would know that, there's a spaza shop that opens, or a house shop, as we used to call it, that opens. All of a sudden, you see that down the road, there's another spaza shop and house shop open. And before you know it, everybody, it's the same street, you might have 3 spaza shops that are there selling your normal daily stuff. Now, if that street had let's assume there's 100 homes in that one street. Okay. When I had one spaza shop that opened in the street, how many potential homes, or let's call it 100 customers, how many potential customers was available to that one home? Anybody? I'm not testing your mathematical ability here, right? Apparently, you have some mathematical geniuses on this call. So now I'm going to test it. So we have a street with 100 homes. There's so now there's our mathematical genius. So that one spaza shop will sell to 100 customers. Correct. Now, your neighbor further down the road sees, yay, but Marlon opened a spaza shop. Marlon is making money. We see now painted his house gold, right? Which is a nice bright yellow. I'm also going to start and open a spaza shop, or I'm also going to start selling chicken because I also want to make money. So now Marlon's neighbor, Chad, also now opens a spaza shop. So now there's 2 spaza shops in the same street. Okay. Now the question is, what is the potential market for each one of us? What is the potential market for each one of us? So Christel says maybe there's 100. Now there's 2 of us. So ideally, if there's 100 businesses, or I mean 100 customers, and there's now 2 of us, technically there should be 50 and 50. Okay. But if Chad wants to get more than 50, then Chad has to either be cheaper than Marlon, or he has to offer more value that the people that was with Marlon would now go to Chad. So you see that picture that, and Karina, you're right, the maximum we can have there is 100. Okay, that's market penetration. Now, all of a sudden, if we find Tegan now comes and Tegan says, no, Tegan is also going to open a shop, and Precious, who's in the same street. So now Precious and Tegan and Chad and Marlon, we're now opening our shops, our spaza shops. Okay. Now my question is, so now there's 4 of us, all selling the same bread, same milk, everything the same. The question is, what would be the market opportunity for each and every one of us? Christelle is spot on. She's already foreseeing that Chad service will be shocking, that Marlon potential customer base will be 100. Karina,
But some will still
Karina,
come.
we had 4 now, Karina. You. So I assume Precious 33, Tegan 33, Marlon 33, and Chad is at one random one. Karina, is that how I read it correctly? Is that how you split the 4? So, but what I want you to see is that if Precious wants more customers, she has to be cheaper. Or if Tegan wants more customers, so the 100 is still 100. That doesn't change. And the problem with a lot of businesses, when you find yourself doing things that a lot of other people are doing, your only value proposition that can set you apart is price, customer service, or give more value for the same price. That's literally what you are worth. So therefore, market penetration is a hard segment to be in. It's a hard quadrant to be in, right? And you would find some businesses come in, they undersell, they go in low, so that other competitors cannot compete anymore, and they basically want them to eventually fall by the wayside, right? That's how they did their market capture. Absolutely. Come in cheap, right? And of course, this is something that most entrepreneurs need to realize. So if you find yourself where you're saying, you know what, there's a lot, it's existing product, existing market, it just means that it's either your customer service, create more value, or your price that's going to have a big play. For most businesses, they use price as that. I know that, for example, ShopRite or in the USafe stores, when they opened the USafe stores, they actually went to, there were some basic products that they were selling at cost, like the milk, the no-name milk or the known brand milk, the bread. I mean, they still have the loaf of bread. I think that's R5, because they knew that that would drive feet into the store away from their competition, right? So market penetration is a one way of growing your business. But I think we're all clear with that one. Now, let's assume, coming back to our example. Now, remember, there's 4 of us now in the street. It's Precious, it's Tegan, it's Chad, and Marlon. Okay? We're now in the street. But now, Precious says, you know what? This is not working. Clearly, we're competing. But maybe what I'll do is Precious, in all her wisdom, found out that there's a street behind us with another 100 people. So now Precious decides Precious is going to set up a store in the street behind us, the same business, but now just taking it into a new location. So what Precious did what they call market development. It's the same, it's an existing product, but taking the existing product into a new market. So Precious might get 25 customers in the street, up to 25 customers in the street where we are currently in. But now, because Precious has gone into a new street, meaning she's gone into a new market, she's again opened up a market for her where she can get up to an additional 100 customers to a business. So market development is where you take the existing product and existing service, and you're now taking it into a new market. In order for you to do that, you need to know your product and your service exceptionally well. You need to know what is this value proposition that you have on offer, and you take it into a new market. Good examples of market development is the franchise models, where they've created these different franchises that would then go and do that. And I think that is very, very important. So market development is take the same product, take the same service, just take it to a new market. Now, new market doesn't just mean a location, right? For example, Precious might decide, you know what, I've got my offering, but now I'm also going to start. I see there's she's already gone into a new street, but then Precious realized there's a factory that's opening up with 1,000 people working at the factory, not too far from her. Precious can decide, you know what, I'm now going to also target the factory and see if I can sell to the factory and their staff. Now that means that is now taking on a new market, but offering the same products that she had access to. Is market development clear? That's where you take the existing offering and you take it into a new market. New market can be a different location, but a new market can also potentially be a different customer segment. That can also be a new market. Okay. Any questions just on that?
Just make a comment. Just make a comment there, Marlon. If you guys think about traditional primary care doctor, GP, and you think about how if you consider the Ansoff matrix now and you look at how they've kind of just been in the market, the model is like the doctor sits back and waits for the patients to come. So even with this, even now at this level where we are moving into now, we are touching on this matrix already, because we are looking at different markets, different ways to go about it, product development. So you are actively in the process of making the service of healthcare or access to primary care a product which you are now going to be selling into the market, which already takes us from, I think it was Precious that said last week, there's all these GPs sitting up. They're all in the same street at the moment, right? And they're all just competing for the exact same people in that street, right? So what we're trying to achieve here is along, exactly like Martin is saying with this matrix, we are actively touching on product development, diversification, market penetration to different markets. Do you guys see that? Like, is it like ringing through to you guys, and can you guys sort of get the sense that is what we are doing with this? That we are shifting to this product focused way of making healthcare available. If you are, react, message it, put in the group if you're thinking about it. But that's ultimately what you're doing. You're not just a normal GP. I mean, that's the long and the short. You're not the traditional saturated old school approach. Okay, so this is all part of the program and part of the process, I guess.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. So, but I want to, at least I hope you're all seeing the picture, right? So I think market penetration is clear. But now we found out that, we understand our customers very well, all right? Muhammad went and spent a lot of time understanding who the customers are, knowing what are their pains, what do they want to gain. And because the understanding of the customer is so good, what you now want to do is the next growth possibility would be product development. It means you sell more to the same customer. A good example is for those of us that generally would go to, let's say you go to a hairdresser. Now you go to the hairdresser, and while you're at the hairdresser, all of a sudden they upsell and ask you, don't you also want to have a mani or pedi, right? So it's the same customer, but you're selling more product or more service to the customer. It's the same with in your instance, you have the customer there, and your question would be, for example, let's say you're offering your service to a small business. So they say, listen, we maybe just want to do consults for our supervisors and our management team. You could potentially say, okay, but could you also offer that so you're trying to upsell whatever your service is to the same customer, either by offering them more, or by asking them, can they increase, or is there a different segment in the customer that you can actually go and sell to? So your big thing, if you think about product development, is where you create new products for the same customer. That's what it is. Okay. So could you, for example, come up with a different service bundle for the same customer that get them to pay a little bit more? I get this dreaded call all the time from mobile network operators. I'm not going to name them, where they call me to tell me, I can now get this new bundle, and I'm going to get 2 gig of data addition, but it's going to cost me like a 30 Rand or 50 Rand more per month. So they're trying to kind of upsell a little bit of more data so that I can pay more. And clearly, I think this is something that we need to be very much aware of when it comes to product development. It's where you create new products for the same customer. I see Bianca's got something there. I've noticed a few new models of healthcare. Medical schemes with various packaging, then also location-based subscriptions to care. Yes.
So I was going to comment on that.
Yes.
And the thing is, Bianca, like you obviously observant of market trends and changes in the market, which is brilliant. But you know what's always been interesting for me is that you always notice that these changes and things tend to happen far away from the clinician, right? So it's always some insurance or someone else is always coming up with these innovative ways. Ultimately, the delivery of the care sits with the clinician. So what we're looking at here is saying, similarly to the way that these organizations, the insurance businesses, medical aids, and so on, are repackaging, which is ultimately what it is. we're trying to do it in a direct to provider setting, right? So where you exactly, it's frustrating because our hands are, you see at the end of the day, the beneficiary of these types of initiatives that are run by medical aids and insurance businesses is supposed to be us or the clinician, right? So we the recipient of the money once it's sort of the transaction has taken place. So, but they are selling to, not to us, obviously, they're selling to the customer. And because they're a financial services business, they've got different rules and regulations around how they can and can't package products and so on. It gives them sort of free will to just kind of do their thing. So you'd have noticed thousands of insurance companies have popped up over the last, 2 or 3 years. We almost bought an insurance business a few years ago, but I made the conscious decision not to do so because ultimately the shift in the power needs to come back to the clinician. So it's not that we want to cut out medical aids at all. That's not the point. There's a space for everything, but there's a direct to provider relationship that at a primary care level, that is what we're trying to focus on. So all these things that they do, you'll see with medical aids, also sorry, Marlon, you'll see with medical aids too, like they out of pocket spend over the last few years has gone up by almost 100%. And that's because medical aids are covering less and less on the day-to-day side, right? But what they're selling to the customer is saying, no, we're going to increase your total coverage for hospital admissions, and then crazy rare stuff that never happens. But to the lay consumer, the perception is that it's value, right? So, but ultimately, we on the primary care side, we lose out, and the patient doesn't always have coverage for the day-to-day stuff because the insurances know it's less likely that they're going to have a major event. So, it's more likely that they're going to use the GP on a regular basis, which is going to cost them money. So I think, yeah, I just want to sort of focus on that because it's great that you sort of observing this, and I think it's super important to observe, what's happening in the market. And those discounted medical insurances, they're not medical aids, right? So they're obviously just a financial services product. And ultimately, the patient as well as the clinician does not benefit from it because you'll see if it's not covered, then you as the doctor don't get paid, and then your relationship with your customer gets damaged if you need to now follow up and recover cash and so forth. So yeah, but a good observation, and yeah, something I think everyone should also be looking at. What's been happening in the market.
Thank you, Chad. And definitely something, you pick up as you begin to explore this, how more opportunities will emerge. I think that is important. And so product development is you understand the customer so well that you know how to create new value for them by creating new products or new services. And every entrepreneur will do that as a way to grow your business. And then finally, we have the quadrant that is the most confusing quadrant, and that's the quadrant of diversification. That is when you go into that quadrant as where you're creating new products for new markets. I almost want to say it with so much certainty. Anyone that builds businesses in the diversification quadrant is most probably being set up to grow and build a big business. So you can have the confidence that you are building and growing a massive and a big business for that. So that's the Ansoff matrix. I'm hoping that you understand how the Ansoff matrix kind of sits together. Most businesses, what you find is that if you find yourself in market penetration, ask yourself, is this something that I can do to move from market penetration to either market development? Is this something that I can do to move to product development? Or is it something that I can do that's maybe in the world of diversification? And that is where you do a lot of R&D. It is kind of new innovative things. I mean, that's the space where you most likely could potentially go to, but that you would find over time, right? So this is the Ansoff matrix from a growth perspective. is everybody clear on the Ansoff matrix? Was it clear enough of how to do that? And again, if I had to use the same example with the 4 businesses that was in the same street, it could be that let's say Tegan might decide later on that Tegan might take will add maybe like a butcher or a fruit and veg place, which is the same customer, but they now just offering additional product to the same customer as a product development, right? So it's very, very important that we understand these different quadrants as part of our growth strategy. Any questions before we proceed to the next part, which is should be easy if you get if you understand the quadrant. Okay. Okay.
Monica, can I just ask you, Bianca, I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but if you think about this what you said now in the chat, about the models and things, if you had to look at sort of this Ansoff thing, where do you think some of this fits in? Because remember now, these are mainly insurance products, right? Which is not what we are. We are in the business of care provision. And insurers are in the business of risk mitigation or risk protection, if you want to call it that. And they govern under different rules. But where do you sort of, in the context of the healthcare system, and if you think about the delivery of primary healthcare, what do you think these guys are doing if you had to look at this sort of Ansoff thing? If you don't mind, I just want to would like to hear your sort of thinking and your, where your head's at and how you're looking at it.
So if I continue with the Dis-Chem model specifically, just because I'm kind of familiar with that, they developed a product that was attractive to a new market, as in, so a lower income market, potentially somebody who couldn't quite afford, a top tier medical aid like Discovery, or I don't know, something more expensive. I don't know what's more expensive than Discovery medical aid.
I think Discovery is pretty up there.
Yeah. But like Dis-Chem Health is underwritten by Kaelo Prime Cure, I think.
Yeah.
And they target like lower income associated with staff health kind of.
Yes.
So like they give Dis-Chem staff the opportunity to pay a portion of their salary into a medical scheme that will then cover their medical aid needs, and also include medication in that. And Dis-Chem is uniquely positioned there in that terms of that product space because they are a pharmacy, so they could probably cut their costs quite significantly that way in offering that to their specific staff members and also other customers. So I think it was a little bit both of like product development and market development as well. And maybe a little bit of diversification for Dis-Chem as a company.
Yes. 100%. No, I think you're 100% right. I think like it's so cool that I like hearing the fact that you really kind of see the different players in the space. And yes, it is underwritten by Kaelo, which is obviously a financial services business or insurer. And the unique opportunity, the thinking for me is always like their customer they've identified, but they didn't really fully think about who's going to be providing the service to them. And that says a lot because yes, they do have network doctors and so on for sure, but they're not in the business of actually wanting people to go to the doctor.
Yeah, I think it's something else. It's like the Dis-Chem Kaelo health providers do have to sign a network contract, so we as the clinicians only get a set, very small fee as well.
A small fee.
So most GPs will, in this area anyways, I don't know otherwhere, but most GPs in this area will have to charge a co-payment to the patient anyway, so it doesn't.
And then the problem that creates the friction with the provider, you see.
Exactly. So we either then have to scale down our product, which we offer to Kaelo clients, or charge them extra for the services that
they should
have already paid for. Yeah,
and then you lose them as a customer because now they're like, why must I pay more?
Yeah.
So you guys can see from an industry point of view, there's friction between the delivery of the service and then obviously the payer being in many cases an insurer. So that friction there's an opportunity there from a pain point of view where you can build out, sort of direct relationships with customers, right? And that could be an SME, that could be, and you can use tools like, which we'll chat about a bit more tomorrow, but things like vouchers, they can do prepaid vouchers for healthcare. You could do, that type of thing. So we're not fulfilling the role of a medical aid or insurer at all, but we are building a direct relationship with our customer, right? Which is appropriate for what our customer requires. So there is this tension, and this is why there's always been like this push from the BHF, which is the Board of Healthcare Funders, to try and sort of overreach and dictate how patients can and can't pay for healthcare. So they're the ones that sort of, medical aids can do this and insurers can do this. And it does disempower the clinician. So there's so many little elements to what you brought up. That's why I just wanted to kind of just speak about it a little bit, because it is indeed an element of growth for the pharmacy business who's moving into this, but the clinician is always the last thought, right? The person actually delivering the care is last on the list of.
Yeah. But I think, and thank you, Bianca, for just highlighting this. I do believe it's important that we understand and again, when you go back to your business model canvas, you ask yourself, so where does that mechanism sit into play? If you are wanting to kind of grow your business, growth comes in either the customer pays more for some value, right? As you mentioned the example where all of a sudden customers have to do the top-ups themselves, which becomes extremely painful for them. Because it's the same, like, it's kind of like a gutted feeling, and I always find it with health insurance. So you pay this monthly fee, and then now you go for something specific, and now you're being told, oh, sorry, we don't cover that. We only cover it in small portion of it. But now you're already there, but you actually feel a bit disgruntled as a customer, which is not the best way to receive a customer, because it doesn't matter what happens from there. Even if you give amazing service, the only thing the customer is going to remember that they had to top up, which is such a pain, and again, what you just shared, Bianca, is a customer pain. So if we can find ways and means, or whatever it is that your value proposition is, that will start addressing some of these pains, that is exactly how you begin to identify pains in your customer. So that's a very, very good example. But I know that I did commit to you that we will be done by 11:15. Let me just quickly do a time check. That gives me, for those of you that have got good maths, how many minutes do I have left? The mathematical geniuses in the group, to get me to 15:15. There we go. Was one thing about time. Okay, I see I've got 35 and 38. I'll take both. So I've got an hour and 13 minutes left. That's brilliant. Okay, so just quickly, just to kind of highlight about when we think about growth, and I do believe this is very important. Okay, when you think about growth, you want to ask yourself, firstly, what will bring you the most results from the least amount of risk and effort? Every entrepreneur, whatever you're going to do, is always going to take a risk and effort. You cannot get away with it. But you almost want to look at, where will I get the greatest return of risk and effort? And that's something that you as an entrepreneur need to consider on your journey. You also have to ask yourself, when you're looking at going on your plan or executing your strategy, can you actually measure your progress or your impact? That's all it is. A growth plan is it's something that you have to measure, okay? But it needs to be measurable. You can't just say, no, I'm building for growth, or I'm going to grow my business. And I ask you, how are you going to grow your business? You're like, no, I'm going to get more customers and I'm going to get more money. That's not good enough, because you need to quantify what does more mean. Now, I've created this little ladder of growth. And this was just a page where I was scribbling on. Okay. Now, the easiest way to grow a business is through market penetration. It's not the preferable, shouldn't be your preference, but it's the easiest way to grow a business. You can go and test me on this. Go and offer your service for half the price of what you're currently offering it, and you most probably going to get more customers coming to you purely on the basis of being cheaper. Okay. So if you want to grow, if you want to see growth and you want to see a growth spurt, look at your price. Pricing can unlock growth for you, or give more value for the same price. It will also bring more people to you. The next version or iteration is taking your offering that you have. Do you remember the example we had with Precious? Deciding to take the same store, just opening another store in the other street. You take your value proposition, your service, and you now take it and offer it to a different market. That's market development. That's most probably your second most, we know if you go the ladder, this is kind of like we're looking at it as from a complexity perspective. So market development is probably the next one that should be fairly doable and achievable from an entrepreneur perspective. Then you explore alternative channels. It means all of a sudden you realize that the customer base who have got health insurance, you're trying to say, okay, but is it something that you could do to sell directly to that base? So where do you find those people? Like, what are the alternative channels that you could do to show them the bigger value proposition if they actually come directly to you instead of going through a third party, or through a broker who's broking for a third party that eventually comes to you? I mean, you're so further down the value chain, by the time it gets to you, there's not much left, right? So could you find alternative channels to reach those kind of customer base, customer segments? I mean, that's the thing. And then we talk about product development. Product development, of course, is not always easy, but it's how do you begin to think about packaging something in a way that has got big enough value that people would be committed and willing to not pay funds to their health insurance, but they would rather come and spend it directly with you. And this is something that when we talk about product development, that takes a bit of time, but it just means you understand your customer very well. So that is the reason why we spoke about you need to understand the customer in order for you to unlock the value of product development. And then you have diversification. Diversification is all of a sudden it is a brainwave that comes your way, and Bianca decides she's going to come up with a new product for a brand new market, right? And that should be interesting. Diversification leads to big opportunities, as I've mentioned before. Then there's also this very awkward type of growth, but it's a growth through acquisitions. I think a lot of people don't realize the power of acquisitions, right? You can grow your business by acquiring, and there's three types of acquisitions that you can do. You can either do horizontal acquisitions. For example, Precious can decide, you know what, this is not working for me. I'm going to go to Chad. I'm going to buy Chad's business. I'm going to buy Marlon's business, and I'm going to buy Tegan's business. Okay. So by doing that, that is what we call horizontal acquisition, which means now all of a sudden, all of us are basically, Precious has basically acquired all the business in the street, which means Precious can now drive that business forward to the street. So that's one way of growing, buying Marlon's customers, Chad's customers, and Tegan's customers along with their businesses. Now, that is not a bad strategy, right? It just means that you're growing yourself horizontally. Other types of acquisition, if you want to buy a business for growth, is you could do backward acquisitions. Now backward acquisitions is simply in your business, if you're getting a supply of something that are very important in your business, or there's a key partner that you cannot operate without that partner to create the value, you could decide, can I acquire the key partner or buy into the key partner's business or buy my supplier so that I control the value chain, right? So that is a backward acquisition. Practical example, let's assume you are baking chocolate cakes, okay? You're baking chocolate cakes, you sell your chocolate cakes through different coffee shops. So you've got a B2B model. However, your chocolate that you get is procured from a very unique place. It's a a chocolate manufacturer that provides you with the chocolate. Now, your chocolate cakes are selling like crazy. So what you would do is, because you want to secure that unique chocolate, you would actually go backward, and you would go and buy the chocolate manufacturer. Right? So that's an example of a backward acquisition, right? And then finally, you can also do what they call a forward acquisition. A forward acquisition could be, all of a sudden, you're baking the chocolate cakes, but now you're selling it through coffee shops. You might decide, listen, but there's a couple of coffee shops that sells 50 or 60% of my cakes. To control that, and instead of them changing their minds, let me go and buy those coffee shops so that I will always have the distribution, right? So forward acquisitions is really about moving into where you control the distribution, right? Takealot did this by buying Mr. D, Mr. Delivery, right? That's a forward acquisition. So just to take you back, and I'm gonna go back to the business model canvas here quickly. So what I just said now is, you got the value proposition. When you want to do horizontal acquisitions, you buy others that offer similar value propositions. You are buying them up, which means you're consolidating the market. If you want to go and you're buying and you're doing a forward acquisition, that is when you are buying certain channels, right? You're actually buying the channel so that you have direct access to the customer segment, right? Be it if the channel is a platform, if the channel is a practice, whatever, you're buying forward. If we're talking about a backward acquisition, then it means you're either buying a key partner that provides you with something, or you're buying a key resource, which could be something that comes from a certain supplier, where you want to own the manufacturer thereof. So that is what we call a backward acquisition. So for any entrepreneur, if you're looking at growing your business, those were kind of like the ones. It's either your value proposition, you increase more value at the same price, or you give the same value at the lower price. That is the market penetration one. If we're saying you want to do market development says you are now moving into different customer segments. Okay, different customer segments or different locations. That is market development. If we are talking about product development is you are now creating new value propositions for the same customer segment. New value proposition, new products or services for the same customer segment. And then diversification is a brand new value proposition for brand new customers, which means you are first in the market and you must probably going to create a big business. All right. Quick, I just kind of wanted for you to see how you can apply the growth strategies onto even your business model canvas. Any questions before we get to the plan itself? Any questions that you might have, or things you want me to clarify? Are you able to see the ladder of growth just based on what I shared? I mean, that's important. Now, it's crazy because, a lot of these kind of growth strategies and Ansoff matrix, they do these things in MBAs and they do it quite detailed. You seem to get the gist of it quite easily. So clearly, you definitely, and I can assume you're doing, as long as you understand this. One of my favorite there's two acquisitions that, well, one, I think I was too young when it happened, and the second one, I was a little bit disturbed because I missed it. Okay. The first acquisition was in 1997. I don't know where you were in 1997 or what you were doing in 1997. Maybe you can check your calendar and see what you were doing in 1997. Okay, Bianca, no, the ladder doesn't necessarily mean that is how it starts. You actually will choose which one you want to do. The ladder was largely to kind of state the level of difficulty and complexity sometimes. The further you go up the ladder, that's really what it is. So the ladder wasn't a sequence, it's just the level of complexity that comes into play.
Yeah.
So just coming back to my two acquisition examples that I find that I completely missed. The first one was in 1997. You know, the 90s was a very good era for those of you that were there. And part of what happened in 1997, there was a company that was called OK Bazaars. You know, have you ever heard of OK Bazaars? Right? And that company wasn't doing too well. And then there was another retailer that decided that they were going to buy this company, which of course was, I think it was Shoprite. And Shoprite went and they bought OK Bazaars for R1, which wasn't a bad deal, I guess. I mean, they bought the debt and everything, clearly. Now, unfortunately, I was too young to acquire OK. I mean, I thought when I saw that, I'm like, man, I didn't have a R5. I could have bought 5 OK Bazaars, you know? So that's the first acquisition that I felt like, oh, I missed the opportunity, you know? And as much as I didn't fully understand the complexity thereof in 1997, I was just gutted because I thought, wow, I actually had a R5 in my pocket and I could have bought 5 of these. But they gave it to Shoprite, you know, so that's a pity. The second acquisition that I was a little bit more knowledgeable, and that was when they sold Starbucks. I mean, I think they sold 13 stores for 7 million rand. And I was a little bit disappointed because I'm like, oh man, I love coffee. And that was, if you look at how much it cost to set up a Starbucks, if I knew and if I was privy to the deal, I was likely would have gone in and wanted to buy it just for the sake of, it was a very, very cheap sale. And it wasn't too long ago. And it was out of that the revival of Starbucks happened. Because the first owner clearly didn't do a good job with it. So acquisitions is always around you. I think many times we don't realize the opportunity for acquiring a business. And I'm not just speaking about in the healthcare sector. I mean, generally speaking, you will be amazed at how many people, and the best time to buy businesses when the economy is not doing too well, because then people just want to sell off. That's the best time to sell.
And there's lots of very simple, boring businesses that make a lot of money, like butcheries and just for some that like literally that's. Can I,
People-
can I tell them quickly about an acquisition of mine, or
Yeah, you can.
So if you look at Marlon's ladder, so I've been on the same journey. It's just now been a bit longer and at a different phase, I guess. But started in the same way, penetrate the market, develop the market, alternative channels, develop product, and then you get into this sort of diversification space, and then your brain switches a little bit from a strategy point of view, where and as you guys go through building your care delivery models out, and you'll see, give it a year or two, your brain is gonna shift gears as you go. And I just want to give you guys some context quickly on from an acquisition point of view. So in my one business, we built a care delivery model, and that model is now replicatable and sort of franchisable. That makes sense. A lot of what we're doing here is also a model, a care delivery model, which we're building. So what we're doing now is I'm trying to consolidate, just like Marlon said. So we're trying to consolidate the delivery of primary care, right? And by consolidate, I mean create a cohesive, consistent, overarching way that it gets done, and sort of controlling as much of the market as possible. So we are busy acquiring a very large primary healthcare business, which, I mean, I just want to give you guys some numbers so you can sort of just get some reference. So this care delivery business is a traditional type GP business that's been around for many, many years, and there's many of these, and we will discuss it again maybe tomorrow a little bit more, but there's many of these that's been around for 25 years, with existing patient base, making good money, with existing systems and processes in place. So for me, as an entrepreneur, I'm looking to acquire this specific business now, and then take my model, which is more modern, more technology orientated, and integrate our processes, policies, and systems into this existing working engine, which is, at the moment, this business makes just under 25 million rand a year revenue, which is obviously top line income it generates from consults and so on. And it makes around 12.5 million rand profit a year, right? Which is significant. And they are maybe not at this scale, but there are many of these types of practices, across South Africa, which have been operating for many, many years. And part of why I'm so adamant on building a community of doctors who have equity, and it's an equitable model, and you're actually building something and not just selling time, is because it puts you in the room to allow you to have discussions about potentially acquiring something to grow. If you are just, Dr. XYZ selling your time, locoming everywhere, that's kind of all you're doing. You're not building up anything, equitable. So this business is going to cost us like 30 million rand to buy. And, there's complex modeling to get to that number, but ultimately that is what these doctors are able to sell their business for, right? Over time. And that's what I'm willing to pay for it. And I'm willing to pay for it because I know from all the steps I've already gone through, market penetration, market development, up to product development, I know I can take those things now and integrate it into an acquisition or a business we acquire, where things are maybe not being done this way. They're a bit more traditional. So this practice has 175,000 patients on its books, and it does 4,500 consults a month. And it's an incredible model. And it's just, for me, it was so nice. I've bought practices before where it wasn't that, it was the opposite, where it was just not run properly. But yeah, I just wanted to give you guys that context so that you know that these types of things are happening like in real time. Like Marlon is saying, it's not just theoretical, something that, could potentially happen. As you go through the steps and it gets more and more complex, you get to this point where now you need to grow in with a different strategy. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have looked at it before or know or have thought about it. If so, that's also something, we're going to work on with you guys. Because like I said, and I'm quite transparent, so I'm trying to consolidate, and part of, building this community and equipping and empowering the doctors is part of that consolidation strategy, because I want to shift the power back into the clinicians' hands, away from the insurers and the medical aids who dictate our lives.
Thank you, Chad. And I think the idea is, there's a lot of opportunities around, and that's also the reason opening up yourself to see, but you're a medical doctor, you're a health professional, but you're also an entrepreneur. It means there's opportunities around you that can create bigger impact. And I think that's part of the when your mind just opens up to these opportunities and possibilities, it will show you what is actually before you. And I think that is something that you might not have always been given the opportunity to think about because of everything else that's happening. But that is the potential. And sometimes these things might completely surprise you. I think that's the one thing that I've always told as entrepreneurs, go and find out, because you might be surprised that sometimes people were waiting for someone like you to come and ask them, can I buy your practice from you? And part of course, part of this particular venture that we are going on, this journey we're going on, is engaging with other private practices as well. And as you begin to engage with them and learn, you might be surprised that, wait a minute, here's actually an opportunity, because you're building this kind of social capital. And I think I told you the last week, I think, that the most precious capital that you can build is social capital. Because it takes one person, that can open a door, that can share an idea, can make an investment that can completely change things for you. And I always want you to remember that. And that is possibly for growth. And I want to kind of quickly share with you one of my favorite stories of thinking about social capital. Right. But I'll share the story at the end. Let me quickly go through this, and then I'll conclude with a story, and show you how the importance of social capital. And in our case here, we have a community of health entrepreneurs that we are building together, where it means that, just imagine what we are able to do if all 300 plus of us come together. It's almost becomes unstoppable, right? Because you're going into it as a collective network. And I think that's the power thereof, right? Nothing should stop us from going and deciding one day you want to buy a health group, but that's the power of the collective. And I think we've missed that so many times. But let me quickly conclude this. So just to summarize quickly, right? We spoke about that you need to know who's your ideal customer. Okay, very important. But now, whenever you're going to speak to Marlon, I'm always going to ask you, do you know your customer? Right? It's almost like a second. I'm always going to take you back to that. It's also important that you need to know what are your strengths, right? Play to your strengths. I always tell people you want to make sure that you play to your strengths. One of my so I grew up in a community where there was a I don't know, some of you might know, there was a street, but it was a circle. Right? So normally growing up, you would run around the circle. Whenever it was athletics time, for those of you that remember school athletics, we would go and run around the circle. It becomes like your athletics track. There was a field in the middle. There was a sand pit, which became a long jump pit, and we just turned it whole. We would go and break the brooms or the mops, and that becomes our javelins. You take the bricks, and that becomes your shot puts. So we literally went all out from an athletics perspective. And I remember, this was obviously when I was much younger. I was at primary school, and for some strange reason, I always thought that I was a sprinter. So because I grew up in what I believe was urban poverty, so normally at school, if you don't have a jacket, they would have where you can wear someone else's jacket because they left it there. Nobody came to claim it. So the jacket that I found, which was too big for me, was actually live in the Western Cape. At the time, it was Western Province colors, right? So it's like a sports jacket, which indicates some prestige. And I was wearing that, and I absolutely believed that I was a sprinter. So every year I would run the sprints, the short sprints, and the interesting thing is, every year everybody would think, no, Marlon is gonna, he's gonna win. And then for 6 consecutive years, for 5 consecutive years I came last. Now just imagine, like, every year you run, people would sing for you on the stadium. They think, no, you're gonna win. And then you come last. The 6th year, I ran, and as we started the race, I went past the first guy. I knew now this was it. This was my season. But then I came second last, because the person that came last basically had a hamstring problem. while busy running. So I came second last. But then on my final year of primary school, I eventually realized that, wait, maybe I'm not made for sprints because I stay in a circle. And whenever I was naughty, my mother would chase me. So I come from the Cape Flats. My mother would chase me around the circle with the sandal. You must know, some of you might know the sandal, no? That some of our mothers have. I think they all went to go shop for the same sandal. You know, when they give you when they hit you, it has like a bit of an echo. You know, it's got you can hear the sound of that sandal. It's that sandal that when you hide and they throw you with it, doesn't matter if you hide behind the couch, it still hits you. And when you look up, then it's back in your mother's hand. It was one of those sandals. So very, very unique. And I then realized, but wait a minute, all my life I was chased around a circle where my mother would chase me. Now, my mother was an athlete when she was at school. And she would chase me, then she would hit me from the halfway right back home. Don't cross the field where she takes me in the street so that everybody can see. You can see those of you with mental, you can see I still have trauma there. But then I realized, but for years, I've actually built a strength of having to run further. And it was my final year of school that I realized that I can actually go and run the 800 meters. And needless to say, I ran the 800 meters and I ended up competing at the SA School Champs. So focus on your strengths, right? It might not be the most glamorous thing in the beginning, but I want to encourage you, right? Focus on your unique strengths, the things that are unique. I think Chad mentioned earlier that sometimes you find these boring businesses that people don't know, which is actually the business that makes the most money, to be honest.
Makes money, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Also,
healthcare is that, eh? The GP businesses, GP practices do make good money. Like they do.
And I want to encourage you, don't strive for perfection. I think sometimes we want things to be perfect first before we do. My encouragement is leverage your strength and make sure that you can do this and it can create value, right? And then what you want to do is, I mean, you want to build momentum. Find your hook. What is that thing that this is the thing that gets customers coming back to me, right? So make sure that you find your hook and that you build momentum in that. Once you have the channel that works, keep going down that channel. And then experiment. I think earlier we spoke about this, try what works, right? How do you go from 0 to 1 within a specific experiment? And once something works, do more of it. And then of course we spoke about the thing about selling, right? How do you can either grow vertically, where we take on more customers, or you ask yourself, can I grow horizontally? Can I offer the same customers more value that they are willing to pay for? And then you're always going to need to track your growth. Tracking of growth is very, very important. So my last slide is really, I'm going to show you a little diagram, which is a very simple example of a growth plan. Okay. And I really want you to understand this, that when you think about growth, I think many times when we talk about when to grow something, you put yourself under such severe pressure because you are not sure how you're going to get there. And sometimes because you're not sure how you're going to get there, you decide not to go in pursuit thereof. And I really want to encourage you as health entrepreneurs, let's re-look at when we think about growth plans. Let's keep it as simple as possible. I'm a creature of simplicity. I love simplicity. When I can get something to be simple and I can understand it, then I know that I can most likely do it. So here's a growth plan template for you. When I did this is what I applied for myself, and actually help. So let's assume for every business you must have a goal. There must be one goal. So for your business, you might say, you know what, my goal for 2025 is by the end of the year, I want to have, and it must be a number, right? And you might tell yourself, I would like to at least have, let's call it 100,000 Rand in income, in revenue, with regards to virtual consults. I'm just using that as an example. Okay.
That's a good example.
So
I've supported that.
So I want to do, my goal is 100,000 Rand in virtual consults. That's in revenue. Now your baseline simply tells you where are you now. So at the moment, there's 0 revenue and there might be 0 customers. Okay. Now as a baseline. So your essential step might be, if you can just get to 100 customers, if you can get 100 customers that somehow in the next 6 months are going to do consults worth of 1,000 Rand, that might be 4 consults, right? So in other words, if you can get to 100 customers, or you could have your essential step could be, could I do 500 consults, right? So you can decide what is that essential step for you. Now, your goal is the big goal that you put yourself out there with a time frame. Could be the next 6 months, next 3 months, next 12 months. Your baseline is where you are right now. And then what is that essential step? In other words, what's that one big step that I need to take that's going to get me to my goal from where I am with my baseline? Now, in my example over here, I'm saying if I can just increase my customers to 100 customers, then it means that I will get myself as close to my goal as possible. This was probably going to be very similar for you. But now, now that you know what your essential step is, you now have to do smaller steps where you ask yourself, what are the 3 things that I need to do, that my sub step that will get me to my essential step? So if you look at the little plan, you put one goal, only one goal per the plan. It's 100,000 Rand in revenue for my virtual consults. At the moment, my baseline is 0 revenue, 0 customers, right? My essential step is to get to 100 customers. Now, how am I going to get to 100 customers? What are the 3 things that I believe I can do to do that? The first one might be that I'm going to start with my own network or people that I've dealt with before. You can decide what are your 3 sub steps that will get you to 100 customers. So the way you do this, you write down your 3 steps. Then you go and you tell yourself, okay, I'm maybe going to start with family, friends, foes, right? Maybe that's one of my steps. I'm going to get all of them to come and to get onto that, and their families. Your second step might be, let me find 5 businesses that might have at least 10 staff members. And let me see if I can offer this to them as a service. Your third step might be, let me do some digital marketing, or maybe the practices that I'm speaking to, maybe there's some opportunity there. But you would know what the best is for your context. In that instance, once you've written down the 3 sub steps, you now go and you test, you go and do those 3 steps, and you see, am I making progress in getting to the 100 customers? If you see after a set period, and you can give yourself 3 months, that you've not made progress, then you can go back and you say, okay, maybe I need to change my sub steps. Maybe what I'm going to do is, instead of using digital marketing because it's not really working, maybe I'm going to go to football clubs, or maybe I'm going to go to farmer markets. Maybe I'm going to go to churches or mosques, whatever the case might be. You find you tweak the sub steps to make sure that you get to your essential step, because your essential step is what you're going to do in order to get you to your goal. Does that make sense? So when you look at this template, I want you to start thinking about, how can I apply growth in my business, even if I'm starting at the 0 base, but applying this very basic principle. And this for me is the simplest way to do a growth plan. You can go and do crazy, beautiful spreadsheets, and you can do all of those things, which you will do one day. But for me, it's about being able to do the simple actions, right? Being able to do things one step at a time that get you to your essential step, to get you to your goal. And for me, this is the simplest way. This is what I apply in my own, when I think about growth. It's so simple that it makes that anybody can do it. So I don't know if there's any questions or anything here that you don't fully understand. But just to repeat again, you write down one goal. Your baseline is where I am right now, okay? And perhaps your baseline might be, look here, but I've already been working with 10 customers that you've already serviced. That's who's your kind of patients. And maybe that's your 10 customers that you could start off with. But then you say, what is your essential step? If you want to achieve that goal, what do you need to have achieved in order to get to that goal? And now you go and you break it down into these sub steps, these smaller sub steps that's going to get you to your essential step. Okay. Any questions or comments? Does it make sense?
Are you guys starting to see the picture for you guys, for your own sort of model and your own business? You guys sort of seeing the process we're going to follow. We're starting small, but you guys are already part of a much larger strategy from our perspective, from our side. And you guys are literally the building blocks of what we're trying to achieve. So just for context, Marlon taught me something a few years ago, when we were in a discussion, and it was about the flywheel effect, and it's something that very much influenced how we're doing this, and that's effectively where multiple iterations over time with more people than what I could ever or Marlon could ever do ultimately result in this flywheel effect, and that's how things move in a certain direction. So the power of a collaborative or cohesive community of doctors on the same journey, on the same path, with the same tools, the flywheel effect in that is significant. It's massive, and I want you guys to really like think about the fact that it is yes, obviously we want each doctor to make money, and and we want to impact lives and so on. But just a step beyond that is a step beyond just ourselves. It's very much a step into the realm of moving healthcare from its current form to a new form. So that is what you guys are part of. And these growth plans and everything we're kind of putting down, it's supposed to be bricks, layers, just bricks on bricks on bricks that build you up, so that you can do. Do what you need to do where you find yourself when no one else is going to be where you are. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you for that. And maybe what I'll do is I'll conclude with a story, if I may, because I did say we are only gonna be keeping you till 11:15. Is there any other questions on this? I hope all of us are clear on growth plan. We've understood the Ansoff matrix, right? Which is either market penetration, market development, product development, or diversification. We show the ladder of complexity when you think about growing a business, and then this very simple growth plan where you put one goal in your plan, and that's what you go in pursuit of. And maybe what I'll do is I'll share a quick little example, a story with you, if I may. I remember my previous life, I'm a recovering academic, so I was actually teaching software engineering at a local university. And while I was there, I had the head of department was looking for someone in the department who was willing to take a professor around. The person was going to be in Cape Town for one day only. And I remember the person, none of the staff was during exams. None of my colleagues at the time wanted to take the person to show them Cape Town. So I put up my hand and I said, I'm willing to take the person. It's a professor that's from Finland. And I gladly took the professor, and we went for a drive around the Cape Peninsula, which is around the mountain. I took the professor to all the cheap places, and I made a conscious decision that I was going to pay. I was going to pay for this professor. So I took them to Kalk Bay, where we bought fish and chips, but the cheap ones, where you would put the fish and chips in a bag, and in newspapers, some of you will know what I'm talking about. and you put it on the bonnet of a car and then you eat it like that. And I just told the professor, no, this is a authentic local experience. And we kept on driving, and each time we wanted to pay, I said, no, I'll pay. I must probably spent could be about 650 rand, including fuel, on that day. Right? Absolutely, Karina, it's the best fish and chips. So this professor had like the best day ever. He was so impressed. He was like, wow, this is amazing. He goes back home. A year later, he comes back. No, someone else comes back, and he tells this person, when you go to Cape Town, go and see Marlin. Okay? And tell Marlin he must take you to that special place. And Karina, again, I do the same tour, same cheap fish and chips. We eat it on the bonnet of the car, open the newspaper, and that's how it works. Man, they were amazed. A third time it came, and they now invite another person to come a year later or a couple of months later. Now, by this time, we started the Art Labs journey where we began to train people in the community how to use technology. This person was so impressed. They're also from Finland. Man, they loved their experience. But then something happened. At the end of it, the person then tells me, Marlon, I actually we're working on a bilateral project with South Africa and with the Finnish government. And I wanted to know, now remember, at that time, I must probably spent, I would say, about 2,000 Rand on those 3 trips. Né? I remember this very clearly. That person, now remember, I never asked for anything. I just said, yeah, I'll pay. That person then tells me, Marlon, sorry, no, they know a friend that is doing bilateral work with Finnish government and South Africa. So they then introduced me to their friend. And when I met the friend said, Marlon, they came to see me. They saw what the work that we're starting to do in communities. And they said, the program is closing, but we've got some money left. And we love the work that you do. Could we potentially give you some support? Can we maybe give you some money? And of course, now, who's going to say no for money, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe Siyabonga will say no, thank you. But yeah, Siyabonga, I'm a different breed. So when they said they want to give money, I said, no, I'll gladly take it. And I asked them how much, and they said 30. I'm like, okay. And that was 30,000 euros that I got. The first contribution we got for Art Labs came from a Finnish partnership. And that Finnish partnership came from social capital that came by taking people around the peninsula and Karina buying them cheap fish and chips. So social capital is so powerful that you can leverage that as a way for growing a business. The crazy thing about all of this is the Finnish Foreign Ministry would eventually work with Art Labs. Now remember, their first check that they paid us was about 30,000 euros. Eventually, we would go on a journey with them where they would help us to grow Art Labs into 6 other countries across the continent, and would finance us with millions worth of euros. Now, if ever there was a great return on investment, is your greatest ROI is when you invest in people, right? And in my case, was investing fish and chips for the people. So I really want you to see the power of social capital. I think sometimes we so quickly to think, oh, I need finances. Whereas the value that we have is the value in people and people in around us. And coming back to what Chad was sharing earlier, we have a wonderful opportunity here that we are a community of health entrepreneurs. All of us coming from different backgrounds, have different networks, know different people. But now just think of the beauty and the power of when we bring all of these things together. Then we're really creating an environment for endless possibilities. So that's my story of why social capital is so important. It's not just about getting something for yourself, but it's about what can I contribute to this particular community, to this network. And that's really how it happened with most of the partnerships that we've built over time. It's always looking at what can we do for them. And out of that, we see the opportunities flow. So I hope you either going to now invest in a fish and chips business, because I was likely going to come to you, or more so, at least I've learned the lesson of how we can be very intentional to strengthen and build social capital, as well as these human connections, as Muhammad mentioned. Okay, so that's just a quick little story, and I think that is it for today. We've covered what we needed to cover. If there's any questions, you're welcome to answer or ask the question, or if you don't have a question, you can give the answers. But other than that, I want to wish you an amazing Wednesday, and looking forward to the next session. You don't want to miss tomorrow's session. Specifically, we're going to unpack and look at what this model is going to look like tomorrow.
Yeah.
So you don't want to miss it.
I'm gonna bring in as much of Marlon's previous things as possible, so that you guys are can see the progression. But yeah, it is gonna be pretty much a morning focused on the exact model.
Perfect.
It's gonna bring in all the different elements. Yeah. So yeah, looking forward. Marlon, that was a funny story, yo.
Hey, I'm telling you, a lot of opportunity. It's one of my favorite stories where a 2,000 rand turned into a multi-million rand investment. I think we made over 29 million rand
Really?
out of a 2,000 rand investment in fish and chips.
Wow, in fish and chips. Wow.
Yeah, so don't undermine people when you see them going to a fisheries. You never know what can come from it.
Yeah. No, I can tell you, my entrepreneurial journey started out of money from a butchery. So
Yes.
I was lent money from a butcher, and that's my first business.
Yeah, so I'll encourage people to look for ways and means of how you can build social capital. And social capital is built by always offering something to the network, offering something to the relationship. And as always, told you the last time, it's always 1 + 1 = 3. Yeah?
Yeah.
That's the equation for partnerships, and that's what makes social capital so valuable. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
The doctors are the best for social capital. I really wish you guys realized that. Like, I hope you guys.
Doctors has got superpower. I mean, like, you've got superpower. I can tell you that. So thank you so much, everybody. I think that is it. We looking forward to, if there's any other questions, it's around for questions. But yeah, looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow.
And then Friday we're doing the sort of financial masterclass. So that's
there's a financial masterclass on Friday. Yeah. So get your calculators out then. And in Friday, 1 + 1 has to be 2, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
So that's the only thing.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, everybody.